Welcome to the lecture, guys. In this lecture, we'll be discussing about JEE Mains 3rd September second shift attempt. My name is Anmol Kumar. I am MTech in Aerospace Engineering from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and your instructor at iitpathshala.com at IIT Pathshala, Delhi. So let us start with the lecture. Now, before going into the lecture, please like, share, and subscribe my channel, and please check out my other videos on physics, chemistry, and mathematics, and my most favorite video on tricks and tips over how you can solve your physics numerical 2 times faster, and KVL and KCL tricks, and most repeated question in NEET. So let us start. In the first question, he is asking you about the dimension of solar constant. So those who don't know about the dimension of solar constant, please remember that solar constant is nothing but it is the ratio of energy upon the time and the area. So the dimension of energy is nothing but energy. I can say that it is nothing but work, and work is nothing but force into displacement. The dimension of force is mlt minus 2 and the displacement dimension is L. Now it's a piece of cake for you guys to find out the ratio of these guys over here. So energy is coming out to be ml square t minus 2, and time is nothing but t, area is nothing but L square. Replace everything all over here and you'll be landing up with this expression. So this is nothing but your option number 1. Let us move to the second question. He is saying that you are hitting this block of mass 1.9 kg over here with a bullet. Okay, the bullet is getting embedded in this box, so it is making one system now. So you have to find the final kinetic energy. So what you can do over here is either you can use the work energy theorem or the special case of work energy theorem, which says that total energy is constant. So I'm using this over here because everyone is used to this one. Now I am saying that at this point, let me number this point as point number 1 and this point as point number 2. Now point number 2 is just millimeter above the ground, just few millimeter above the ground. Okay, so I can say that total energy at this point will be equivalent to total energy at this point. Okay, so total energy at this point is nothing but the sum of kinetic energy and the potential energy of this system over here at this point, and total energy at this point is nothing but the sum of kinetic energy and potential energy at point number 2. Okay, so you have to figure out the energies at both of the points. Now what you can do over here is, let us talk about the case first, or the initial case over here, where my bullet is hitting my box over here. Now to find the kinetic energy of this system over here, what I can do is I can figure out the velocity of the system. First I have to figure out the velocity of the system after embedation. So how can I find it? I can find it out by the method of conservation of linear momentum, which says initial momentum which is carried by this bullet should be equal to final momentum. Okay, final momentum which is carried by the system, which is nothing but the bullet plus block. Okay, so your bullet is having a mass 0.1, it is getting embedded into this box of 1.9, so they are making a single system of mass 2 kg. So you can figure out the velocity of that system, okay, which is coming out to be 1 meter per second for me. Now as you know, I have figured out the velocity over here. I have taken care of the mass over here, which is nothing but 2 kg, because the system is getting, the bullet is getting embedded into the mass 1.9 kg block over here. So they are making a single system, bullet plus box. Okay, and because they are at a certain height from the ground or from the reference, which is nothing but 1 meter over here, so I can say that my gravitational potential energy is mgh, where h is 1. Okay, talking about the second point over here, the final kinetic energy is will be something like 1 by 2 mvf square. Now vf is the velocity just prior to hitting the ground. Okay, and mghf is nothing but the potential energy just millimeter above the ground. Now you can say that you are taking a very small distance above the ground, for example 0.000000001 millimeter above the ground. So it is nothing but a negligible amount. So you can say that my potential energy is nothing but equivalent to 0. Equate both of them, you can figure out the total final kinetic energy, which is coming out to be 21 joule. Okay, also you can figure out the final velocity also. Okay, so if your question is asking about the final kinetic energy, you can figure out from this expression over here. Just sum this expression, add this expression up, and if you are figuring out about the final velocity, you can just use the following expression over here. Okay, now moving toward the next question. A mass m is moving in SHM on a line with amplitude a frequency of f in the spring mass system. Suddenly, half of the mass comes to rest just after the moment when it crossed the mean position. Now the new amplitude will become lambda a. You have to find the value of lambda. So again, you are having a spring mass system. It is carrying a mass m. It was doing SHM, it was undergoing SHM as usual, as we know from our textbook. Now suddenly, at a certain case, what you are encountering is, you are encountering that half of the mass becomes at rest at the mean position and half of the mass is still in moving, is still doing SHM. Now you have to find the amplitude of that mass. Okay, so what I can do over here is, again I can use my linear momentum concept, because in order to have the amplitude I must find the velocity, and by the method of total energy conservation I can figure out the amplitude. So please follow the following steps. First, at the mean position, wheresoever I am having my mass splitting up into two parts over here, I can write as, at mean position initially I was having my total velocity to be equivalent to u, let's say, and my total mass was m at my initial position. Okay, at my initial case. Finally, mass were splitting out, among which one of the mass was having a zero velocity and another mass was carrying a velocity v dash, let's say. Okay, so let's say the another mass which was in dynamics or which was undergoing SHM was carrying a velocity v dash. Now what I can do is, I can figure out the value of v dash from over here. Now using the energy method, what I can say, in the initial case, my total potential energy which is stored by the spring is nothing but 1 by 2 Ka square will be equivalent to the maximum kinetic energy at the mean position itself. You can figure out for the amplitude A1, and for the second case you can do the same thing, but here you are having the energy contribution due to half mass which is undergoing with a velocity v dash over here. Okay, so just you can find out the value of A2 over here, find out the ratio, and you can figure out the value of lambda from the ratio itself. So I am having the following ratio and I am having the value of lambda equivalent to 1 root 2. Okay, okay, let us look at the following question over here. You are given with a loop which is carrying a area S, having n turns, carrying I current, and is placed in a uniform magnetic field with its plane parallel to the magnetic field. Now if this loop is experiencing a torque tau, you have to find the value of magnetic field. So what you can do over here is, you know the formula, standard formula, when you put your loop carrying current in a magnetic field, then it experiences a torque. So I am having the following formula which says tau is nothing but equal to m cross b. Okay, so it's come out to be mb sine theta. This is the following output of this expression. Theta is nothing but 90 degree in my case, because my b is going in this direction, my area vector is coming out to be in this direction, and both of them are making an angle of 90 degree with each other, as you can see in the slide. Replace all the values, you will be left with the following expression NIAB. A is given to be as S. Now take the value of b or equate it to tau as follow. So you'll be left with the following expression. So b is nothing but tau upon NIS. Okay, now let us move to the next question, which says you are having a block. You are having a block which is going up on a rough plane over here, which is inclined at an angle 30 degree. Okay, and after some time it reaches to the starting point again, but now it is having the velocity v naught by 2. Then you have to figure out the roughness of this plane over here. So what I can do is, in the first case, as my block was traveling with the velocity v naught to the highest point, I know that at the highest point it will be having a velocity equal to 0. Okay, it will be stationary at the highest point. Okay, because it will lost all its energy. Okay, so now what I can do is I can use the method which I've studied in the kinematics, okay, and the NLM. First I will figure out the net acceleration. So to figure out the net acceleration, what I can do is I can make the free body diagram as follow. So as you know, your block which is traveling with the velocity v naught, somewhere in the middle of the inclined plane will be having the force diagram as follow. Your normal contact reaction will be perpendicular to your rough inclined plane. Your mg will be acting as follow. Then because your inclined plane is inclined at a certain angle, mg will be divided into two components over here, mg sin theta and mg cos theta as follow. As well as because there is roughness, friction will be acting in opposite to the direction of the movement of the block, as it will oppose the motion of the block. Okay, so this is your friction as provided in you as shown in the green color over here. Okay, now acceleration is coming out to be g sin theta plus mu g cos theta. Okay, or you can say that force is nothing but mass into acceleration, and total retarding force is here is nothing but mg sin theta plus mu n, and n is nothing but contact normal reaction is nothing but, if I equate the following expression over here, I can say that contact normal reaction is mg cos theta. So from here you can figure out the value of acceleration. Okay, now as you know, you are traveling initially with the velocity v naught and stopping at the highest point. I can say that v square equal to u square plus 2as. Okay, where your final velocity at this point is 0, initial velocity is v naught. Okay, and your acceleration is acting against you. Okay, so it is retarding your motion. So I have mentioned a -1 over here and mentioned my acceleration magnitude over here. Now as you can see from the question itself, let's say I am moving a distance s to the highest point over here. This is my highest point and I am moving a distance s to the highest point over here. So I've mentioned the distance s over here. So I'm left with the following expression. Okay, now second case, in the second case in which you are traveling down with, and you are having a final velocity equivalent to v naught by 2. Okay, v naught by 2 as your final velocity. At the middle of somewhere you'll be having the following force body diagram. Okay, you are having the following free body diagram. Now you have to account for the acceleration in the similar manner which I have done in the previous slide. A is coming out to be g sin theta minus mu g cos theta, because now friction is acting in the upward direction as follow. It is retarding your downward motion. Again apply the same equation. Okay, and in this expression you are having your acceleration to be in the direction of motion. So I have written a +1 over here. Okay, I have multiplied a +1 over here. This is my equation number 2. Divide both of the equation, okay, and eliminate everything and put the value of theta in both of the expression, which is nothing but 30 degree, and you will be landing up with the following expression of mu, which is coming out to be 0.35. Now let us look at the following question over here. An ideal gas is heated by 160 joule at a constant pressure. Its temperature is raised by 50 degrees Celsius. Okay, so this is my first process going over here, constant pressure process. Then if 240 joule is heat is supplied at constant volume, the temperature raised by 100 degrees Celsius. So this is my second process going over here. Then I have to find the degree of freedom. Okay, so first process is constant pressure and heat is provided. Then second process is at constant volume, then heat is provided. So I can say that if I have to find the value of degree of freedom, I can relate it by the simple formula over here, which says Cp by Cv, because heat is nothing but mc delta T, and this is specific heat will depend upon the process itself. Either it is constant pressure or it is at constant volume. So I know that Cp by Cv ratio is related to degree of freedom in this following manner. So if I find out the value of Cp by Cv by the following data over here, I can find out the value of degree of freedom. So my first process is nothing but constant pressure process. So delta Q will be equal to Ncp delta T, where delta Q is given out to be 160 to me, delta T is 50. Okay, temperature is raised by 50 degrees Celsius. Now for the second process, similarly 240 joule of heat was added and the temperature was raised by 100 degrees Celsius. You will be finding out the value of CV from here. Calculate the ratio of Cp by Cv and just compare it to the following expression over here. So I am getting a value of 4 by 3 for my Cp by Cv, and if I compare it to the following expression, I will be landing up with the degree of freedom to be equivalent to 6, okay, which is my option number 3. Let us move to the next question. So in the following diagram, you have to find the reading of the voltmeter, where voltmeter is carrying a resistance of 10 kilo ohm. Okay, so you can pretty much do it by using the KVL and KCL method. So if you haven't seen my KVL and KCL video, the link is under the description. Please check it out. Okay, now what I can do is, let us say the current eliminated by this, or current by this battery, is I. So if I go through by this method, which says that you have to account for the current in each of the branch, I will be doomed, because I am having only 1 minute or maximum 2 minutes to solve the following question. So what I can do is, I can find the current in each branch as follow. So as you can see, this 400 ohm resistance is carrying same voltage as by this voltmeter over here. So let's say this voltmeter is reading some voltage V, and because it is having a resistance R which is 10 kilo ohm, by the method of Ohm's law I can say that V equal to IR, and I in my voltmeter is nothing but V by R. So V upon 10 into 10 to the power 3, okay, so 10,000 ohms. Now again, because same potential difference is in between Q and R over here, in between, let us say, Q and R over here, so I can say that V upon 400 will be the current in this resistance over here. Okay, so let us say this is my current 1, this is my current 2. At the junction R, both of the currents are going to add up, and this resultant current I will be getting. Now after this, I've eliminated all the complexities of the question. Take the following loop T, P, Q, S and apply the KVL. Okay, so you'll be landing up with the following expression over here. So please check out my KVL and KCL video to figure out how I got this expression over here. Link is under the description itself. Figure out the value of V, okay, and you'll be having the value of V as 1.95, which is my option number 3. Now in the following figure, there are two concentric spherical shell. You have to find the potential difference in the spherical shells, in between these spherical shells. So what I can do is, let me mark a point P at my first shell and a point Q at my second shell over here. So to find the potential at the point P, which is nothing but my smaller shell, I can write it as follow. Okay, V inner is the contribution of this spherical shell at this point and this spherical shell at this point. So V is KQ by R. Okay, V is KQ by R. So for this spherical shell at this point, R is R, and we know that the potential due to this spherical shell inside any point including the center is nothing but KQ by the respective R, which is 4R. Okay, so now I have given the current Q1 to my first shell and Q2 to my second shell as per the question. Okay, so I'll be landing up with the following expression over here. Now for the outer shell at point Q, the contribution of this small shell will be KQ1 upon the distance from that point, which is nothing but 4R, and for this bigger shell it is nothing but KQ2, the respective current of this shell, upon the radius of this shell, okay, which is nothing but 4R. Okay, so I'll be landing up with this following expression. So now you have to find the potential difference. So what you can do is, you can subtract the inner by the outer one. Okay, so you'll be landing up with the following expression over here. So it's pretty much simple. If you are having just a basic clue what is potential difference, then you can figure out the whole damn expression over here. Okay, so the option is 3 by 16 Q1 by R, which is my fourth option. Now let us quickly move to the next question. In this question, as you can see, very rarely we can see the application of Newton's law of cooling in the JEE mains examination, but here they have given the question. So now your body is cooling from 50 degrees Celsius to 40 degrees Celsius in just 5 minutes, and the surrounding temperature is 20 degrees Celsius. You have to find the temperature of the body in next 5 minutes. So what you can do is you can employ the direct formula of the Newton's cooling, which says dq by dt equal to k bracket average temperature minus the surrounding temperature. Okay, now your job here is to find this value of k. Okay, so my aim is to find this value of k. Why? Because if I find this value of k, then from the formula itself I can figure out the final temperature of the body after the 5 minutes. Now let us just apply all the data into the following question over here, following formula over here. What I can do is dq by dt is given to me, which is nothing but 50 minus 40 upon 5. 50 minus 40 upon 5. So I'm going from 50 degree to 40 degree. Okay, so I'm cooling over here. So here I've written equal to k and averaging both of the temperature over here with the following terms, then putting the value of surrounding temperature over here, I can figure out the value of k. Okay, now in the second expression where I have to find the temperature of the body in next 5 minutes, what I can do is, again, now I am going from 40 degree to, let us say, any temperature theta. Okay, so what I can do is just apply both of the data which I have assumed into the same formula over here. I will be landing up with this 40 minus theta by 5 equal to k and average of both of the temperature minus the surrounding temperature. Take the ratio of both of the equation and you will be landing up with the value of theta as 33.3 degrees Celsius. Okay, now here you are given with a loop. Your wire is having a cross section of 4 millimeter and it is placed perpendicular to the magnetic field. So your wire is placed perpendicular to the magnetic field as follow. So as you can see, my magnetic field is coming out from the plane of the wire and the area or the normal vector is also coming out from the plane of the wire, and both are carrying an angle of 0 degree in between them. So both are inclined at an angle of 0 degree. Okay, both are parallel to each other. Now your magnetic field is varying with time as follow. Now you have to find the induced current in the wired loop. Okay, pretty much in simple question. You can use the logic V equal to IR if you have to find the value of current. Okay, now R is given to you. R is nothing but rho L by A. Now A will be the area of cross section of the wire. Okay, you have to take care of that. L is nothing but the total length of the wire. Okay, so 0.3 to one of its edge makes the length equivalent to 0.3 into 4 times, because it is having 4 edges over here. Okay, now resistance is being taken care by us. Now we have to find the value of V. From the chapter electromagnetic induction, I can say that V is nothing but minus d phi by dt. Okay, or I can take the magnitude itself by taking the modulus of the term. Okay, because I am not interested in the direction over here or the sign in over here, so it is coming out to be d phi by dt for me simply. Now phi is the flux, and flux is nothing but BA cos theta, the angle in between the magnetic field and the area vector. Okay, so B is not given to me, but dV by dt is given to me. I have to take care of this term. I have to keep this in mind. A will be the area of the loop, which is nothing but 0.3 whole square, because it is a square loop. Theta is 0 because both of them are parallel to each other. Okay, now just put it into this following expression over here. You will be having the following expression. Now B is a function of time, so you will be having dB by dt, and you are being equipped with the value of dB by dt to be equal to 0.2. Okay, just put it over here and find the value of V, which is coming out to be 0.018 for me. Now put every damn value in the following V equal to IR. Okay, and you will be landing up with the value of I. Do it yourself and please mention it under the comment section. What's the value of I you are having? Now this is an important question over here. Electric field of an electromagnetic wave is given to you as follow. the equation corresponding to the magnetic field at time t equal to 0 you should be knowing, means you have to mention that. Now as you know, from the following equation I can say that omega t minus kx is representing a wave traveling in the positive x direction. Okay, from my waves chapter itself I have figured this out. Okay, so if my wave is traveling in positive x direction, my electric field is in my positive j cap direction, as from this expression I can see it is moving in positive j cap direction. Then because I know that my wave direction is nothing but the cross product of the magnetic and the electric field vector. Okay, cross product of both of them vector. So if I have to get a plus I cap vector, what I can do is I know that one of the two vectors should be plus k cap. So my electric field vector is plus j cap, and I know plus j cross k gives me a plus I vector. So this tells me that I must be having a magnetic field vector to be traveling in plus k direction. Okay, plus k direction. Now to find the magnitude of that magnetic field vector, what I can do is I can employ the following formula from the electromagnetic waves chapter itself, which says B naught is E naught upon C, where C is the speed of light, and speed of light is nothing but 1 upon mu naught E naught, where both of them are constant. You can check in your chapter itself. Okay, do some homework. So I'll be landing up with the following expression. So from the information I can say that my first option is the correct option, where this is my amplitude and this is my direction, and at time t equal to 0 you have to put omega t equal to 0, and cos omega t minus kx will be equal to cos minus kx, and cos minus kx is nothing but cos kx. Okay, so first option is the correct option. Now let us move to the next question. The next question is saying that you are given with 2-point sources with same power. One source is emitting photons of lambda 500 nanometer, and other is emitting X-ray photons of lambda 1 nanometer. You have to find the ratio of photon density from both of the sources. So you can apply the direct formula over here, which says if you are having a power, then you will be relating the power with the number of photons as follow from the direct formula of your modern chapter. Okay, so if you have learned this formula from your atoms chapter itself, atoms and nuclear, then well and good. If you don't know, then please write down. Okay, write it down. So here I can see that if everything is constant, my p is constant, my h is constant, my c is constant, then n is directly proportional to lambda. Okay, n is directly proportional to lambda. Take the ratio and you will be landing up with the following expression over here. Okay, now in the following question over here, a spherical mirror forms an image of the object at 10 centimeter placed on the principal axis. So you are having the v value over here, the value of v. Okay, the distance of your image from the spherical mirror. Okay, and your object is being placed at 30 centimeter from the mirror itself. Now you have to find out the final velocity of the image, given that your object is moving at the velocity 9 centimeter. Now if you know the derivation of having or calculating the expression of the velocities from the mirror formula itself, then well and good. If you don't know, then I can give you the direct result of the derivation itself. Put everything over here. You need the value of velocity of image, you are having the velocity of object, you are having the position of the image, you are having the position of the object itself, which is 30, this is 10, and this v naught is 9 centimeter per second. So it is coming out to be minus 1 centimeter per second. Okay, so this is incorrect, minus 1 centimeter per second. So the third option is the correct option. Okay, now in the following question, the mass density of a sphere is varying as follows. You have to find the magnitude of the gravitational field. Now if you guys don't know about the gravitational field, consider this question as follow. You are having an electric field. So as you know, electric field is nothing but E equal to force upon the charge. Okay, this is nothing but the test charge. Okay, and you can say that here if you are talking about the gravity, then there should be a two mass system over here. So gravitational field is nothing but the force due to gravity upon the test mass. Okay, so you can consider a test mass of 1 kg. So let's say I'm putting my test mass at this place point P over here. Okay, let's say, so this is my force I'm experiencing, and I am dividing this force by my test mass. Okay, by my test mass. So this m2 is nothing by test mass, so I'm cancelling it out, and I'm having the following expression: g m of the sphere upon r square to be my gravitational field expression. Okay, so I'm putting a test mass over here to check out the result which I want to find out, the maximum magnitude of gravitational field. So what I can do is, let's say at a distance x, I am taking a shell of thickness dx. Okay, so now what you can do is, because you have to find the intensity over here, the field over here, what you can do is you can integrate the mass of this sphere ranging from 0 to r. Okay, ranging from 0 to r, and after finding the mass of the sphere, you can just put it into this expression over here. Okay, so let's say I am having this small strip of dx, small shell of strip dx over here. I've written the expression, I'm calculating for the mass, I'm ranging it from 0 to r, I'm ranging it from 0 to r. Okay, so I've given with the density itself, okay. So what you can do is, mass equal to density into volume, mass equal to density equal into volume. You're given with the density, and volume of this small spherical shell is nothing but 4 pi its radius, which is x square, into the thickness. Okay, so you can use this formula over here, and you can integrate from 0 to r, and you will be landing up with this. Okay, now just put it into the expression itself. You'll be landing up with this following expression: r is the radius of the sphere, which is nothing but 0 to r. Okay, now you have to maximize the following expression, you have to maximize this expression over here. So mathematically what you can do is, you can take the derivative. So dE by dr should be equal to 0 for my maximization process. Okay, so just find the derivative and find the value of r, which is coming out to be root 5 by 3 for me, root 5 by 3 for me. Now you have to figure out the value of maximum E. So just put this value of r into this expression over here, you'll be having the following expression. Okay, so pretty much simple question. Now let us do the following question. Two light rays having same wavelength lambda in vacuum are in phase initially. Okay, so they are same in phase. Then the first ray travel a path L1 through a medium of refractive index N1, while the second ray travel a path L2 through a medium of refractive index N2. The two waves are combined to produce interference. The phase difference between the two waves at the point of interference is, you have to find out the phase difference. So now let me tell you one thing. As you know that phase difference is nothing but 2 pi by lambda into the path difference. To figure out the path difference is not a simple job here, because here your path difference is nothing but your optical path difference. Now let me tell you what is the optical path difference. In optics, the optical path difference or optical distance is the product of the geometric length of the path followed by light through a given system and the refractive index of the medium through which it propagates. You have to remember that. So it is nothing but mu into L. So for my first one, it is nothing but N1 into L1, and for the second case it is nothing but N2 into L2. Here I've given a formal derivation how to find the optical path length. You can check it out. Now you have to figure out the path difference. So what you can do is, my first optical path length is N1 L1, my second one is N2 L2. Take difference of the following, which is coming out to be N1 L1 minus N2 L2. Put it over here in this following expression, you will be landing up with the following expression, and I can say that the option number 2 is my correct option. Now let us move to the next question, which says you are having a constant power supply. okay, to a mass m which was initially at rest. You have to choose the correct graph. You have to choose the correct graph. Now as you know, power is nothing but work done per unit time, and work done is nothing by work energy theorem. It is difference in kinetic energy. Now initially my mass is at rest, so I can say that kinetic energy final minus kinetic energy initial, my initial kinetic energy is equivalent to 0, so I am left with my final kinetic energy over here. Okay, so I am having this T to be multiplied over here, so P into T is equal to half mv square. So I am having this expression over here. Now just find the value of V. You're relating V with T, and you know that V is nothing but ds by dt. Now you are going from time 0 to t and distance from 0 to s. Okay, replace the value of v over here. Replace the value of v over here. You'll be having the expression something like this: s equal to some constant value into t to the power 3 by 2. Okay. Now he's asking you a graph in between this distance s and this time. So you are having a relation s equal to constant k t to the power 3 by 2. Now if you are going to plot this curve, it will certainly look something like this, and I know that my third option is coming near to this graph over here. If you don't know about this graph plotting, you can see it over here. Y square equal to ax cube is plotted as follow. Okay, maybe you have studied it in your maths class. Okay, maybe you have studied it in your maths class. Now let us move toward the next question, which says you are having a p-n junction which becomes active as photon of wavelength lambda 400 nanometer falls on it. You have to find the value of energy gap. So pretty much CBSE type question. So you can find it out by the direct formula over here, which is hc by lambda. Lambda is given to you. You can figure it out yourself. Moving toward the next question is, you're having this diagram over here. Moment of the inertia of the system about y-axis is this. You have to figure out the value of n. So now moment of inertia is nothing but mr square. So there is a system of discrete masses over here. So this mass is at origin itself, so the contribution of moment of inertia by this mass is nothing but 0, because it is having a r equal to 0. For this mass it is having m into the distance from the rotating axis itself, which is nothing but a. So ma square. For this mass it is nothing but ma by 2 whole square. You can figure out the moment of inertia. Compare it with this expression over here. You will be landing up with the value of n equal to 25. Now let us move to the next question, which says a rod is rotating with the angular velocity omega about this axis AB. You have to find the value of theta. Now this is a good question. Why? Because in the following question what I can do is, because if I have to keep my rod in at this angle only, what I can do is I can have this by the balance of the torque itself. Okay, if torque due to my centrifugal pseudo force acting on this rod is balanced by my torque due to gravity, then I can have this position or this theta itself. Okay, now you have to keep in mind that to calculate the centrifugal rod, you cannot just take the central point at L by 2 where your mass is concentrated and you can have the value of centrifugal force over there. So now first you have to calculate the value of the centrifugal force itself. So what I can do is, because you have to keep in mind that this system is a rod, okay, and every part of the rod is at different distance, from my rotating axis over here. So every part or every chunk of this rod, as you can see on the screen, this rod is nothing but made up of small squares, will be having certain centrifugal force outward. Okay, every chunk of the rod will be having certain centrifugal force outward. So how can I account for each of the elements over here? So what I can do is I can have a small element dx at a distance x from here, and I can figure out its centrifugal force as well as the torque applied by this centrifugal force at this point in green O. Okay, so the distance in between the force and this point O is nothing but x sine theta over here as per the diagram. So the torque is nothing but r into f. Okay, r cross f, and here theta is 90 degrees, so rf sine theta becomes, my torque become r into f. So m omega square x cos theta multiplied by x sin theta. So this is my centrifugal force. Now to calculate my gravitational torque, the torque due to gravity, I can simply take this diagram over here. My gravitational center will be lying at L by 2 from the O point over here. So torque due to this mg will be nothing but equal to mg and the distance in between both of them, which is nothing but L by 2 cos theta if your angle this is theta over here. Okay, now you have to integrate from 0 to L to find the complete value of torque due to your centrifugal force. Okay, so you can do it by yourself only. Equate both of the expression and you can have the value of theta from here. Okay, so it will be something like sine inverse, in terms of sine inverse. Okay, so please write it in comment section what you are getting. Okay, so guys, if you love my videos, loved my lecture, please give it a thumbs up, like, share and subscribe, and please write down in comment section what you want next in the next videos. If you want a one-on-one session, you can contact me on the number itself I have given in the description box and on the screen, and you can have the tuitions. The fees is as low as possible from 250 to 500 per subject. So we'll meet you in the next lecture. Until then, goodbye guys.